Hey everyone, welcome to day 2 of the Ditch Your Diet Challenge. I'm excited to be doing it. I'm excited to have you here. If you hop on, say hello. If you're watching on the replay, say hello so I know who tuned in. So day 1, we talked a little bit about the diet mindset and how to ditch that diet mindset and how to just really find a nice balance between, the indulging and restricting. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be one, only restricting for a week or a month while we're on a diet and then indulging when we're not on the diet, and then this cycle creates. So yesterday we talked a little bit about that, in addition to not really taking anything out of our diet, but adding in more of the whole foods, all of the good stuff that we want in our, we want to start adding in more of these beautiful, nutritious foods, and then that will naturally crowd out the other stuff that we don't really want in our diet. And so if you didn't see that, I will add it to the page below. I know it was a little bit glitchy. I don't think it added properly to the group. So I will re-share that just in case you've seen it. And then also I want to make sure that everyone has the workbook. You only got the workbook if you subscribed to the challenge. So I'm hosting the challenge in this group, but only people who actually subscribed got the workbook. And the workbook is really useful. I refer to it throughout the program, and additionally there are exclusive recipes in this one that, usually I refer to my cookbook for the recipes because they're just my go-to recipes that I talk about all the time. But I put these together specifically for this challenge. So if you didn't get that, I will add that. I'll link that below so that you can snag this if you want. And then there's other goodies in here, which one of them, which I talked about yesterday, was the Whole Foods shopping list, because it can be a little bit overwhelming when you go shopping for all this stuff. You're like, well, what do I even buy? So there's a whole shopping list in here, and then as you guys know, I come on here, I do my grocery haul so that you can see what it is that I'm buying, and then what I'm making with it. Because I know it can be, again, overwhelming if you're like, okay, great, I got a bunch of carrots and some green beans and some chicken. Now what do I do with all this? So, I like to share that with you so that you can see, you can get ideas, you can get creative. And really, when you go to the grocery store, you should go with a plan and then come home with the groceries and then make something delicious with it. But I'm here to support you and provide you with those tools as you transition over into a ditch your diet mentality, healthy lifestyle. So that's what we talked about yesterday. And I know that can be a little bit, you're like, well, how do I just, you've been thinking this way for so long. And I know that it comes with time and with practice. I mean, however old you are, you've been most likely thinking one way for the majority of your life. So with anything else, it just takes practice. So be gentle with yourself, and if it's every single Monday that you're like, oh my goodness, you find that you slip up again and again and again, the only thing that matters is that you get back up and try again. So, and again, I'm here to support. But today we're going to be diving in a little bit deeper. It's day 2. We're talking about creating a balanced plate. So yesterday we talked about what to start eating, because it can be so overwhelming, so confusing. What is healthy anymore? There's all these diets, all these programs. You don't really know where to start. You feel overwhelmed by the whole thing. You think it's expensive and time consuming to even prepare. So what's the point? Like, why even bother? But yesterday I clear a lot of that up. And today I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper, since this is a weight loss challenge. And before I go any further, I just wanted to emphasize that it's not that I'm promoting or, just saying that everyone needs to lose weight. But the reason why this is a weight loss challenge is because this is the time of year that everyone seems to be on some sort of diet, or they want to lose weight. It's getting warmer out, and we want to, it seems to be, at least with the clients that I work with, the women that I talk to, teenagers that I talk to, children that I work with, even who put themselves down, put their bodies down, and they beat up on themselves. So I want to, this challenge is so that if losing weight, I mean, some people want to gain weight, whatever it is, like if losing weight or just feeling best in your body or just being at an ideal place where you feel comfortable is going to make you feel a little bit more confident, then that is all I'm looking to have you take away from this. I'm not saying like everyone should lose weight, no, but I know that this is the time of year that most people have that on their mind. So I want to show you that there's a way that doesn't mean go on keto or, go to GNC and get these shakes, because that is not necessarily the answer. And I'm going to dive into that in just a bit. So yesterday I talked about the whole foods and what to eat. But today, I'm going to talk about creating that balanced plate. And if I said have whole foods and I talk about sweet potatoes and I talk about, these whole grains and I talk about, all these different things, does that mean that you can eat, sweet potatoes, a pile of sweet potatoes for lunch, or only have eggs for breakfast, or, they're whole foods and you're eating them throughout the day, but how are you going to construct this meal, which is very important. So you want to have a balanced plate, and you want to, I get a lot of questions a lot of the time about, is protein going to help me burn fat, or are carbs making me fat, is this going to give me energy, or so it's not that it's one specific food group or another. It is the food groups in a whole, in conjunction. It's not necessarily that protein burns fat, but when you build a plate with majority protein and veggies, then that, and not so much of other things, which I create, as a side note, in my health coaching, in my one-on-one programs, this is exactly what we do. We work on figuring out where you are and where you want to be, and then manipulate these food groups, these whole food groups, to exactly what you should be eating daily. So that is just a side note, that this is just a general overview of it, where if you want a more in-depth construction of what you and your unique body and what your unique goals should be, what your plate should look like, then you can let me know. We can hop on a consult call and then I can talk to you more about that. But this is just a general overview. So it's not that the protein is going to help burn fat, but when protein and veggies are mainly consumed, and then you're limiting, or you're adding in healthy fats, you're limiting certain carbohydrates, yes, that could contribute to muscle gain, okay? But that doesn't mean that it's the protein doing it. Same thing with the carbohydrates. Just because you're eating carbohydrates doesn't mean it's going to make you fat. Carbohydrates are essential. They help with creating sustainable energy, helping you help your brain function, help you sleep well. So all these foods really work in conjunction with one another. And when you create a nice balanced meal, you're creating a nice balanced mood, a nice balanced person. You are, you're creating the same sustainable energy. You're not starving yourself. And all these food groups really serve a purpose. Even just different fruits and veggies, like all of these beautiful colors, and all of these, they all have different vitamins and nutrients, and it's really cool when you see like what makes a green vegetable green, and then what is it in what vitamin is it in the red fruit or veggie that makes it red, and like why you need that and how it contributes to you. So when you're cutting out major food groups to be on a certain diet, like I'm not throwing shade on any specific diet, but when you're cutting out major food groups like the ketogenic diet, and you think about it, and you're cutting out these major food groups that have like beautiful fruits and veggies and all these colorful, really nutritious foods in them, it just doesn't sit well. I mean, at least with me. And when you think about it, there's so much, like, for example, the keto diet, because I'm using that as an example because I know it's hot right now. Like there's so much like bacon, or so much cream cheese, or so much sour cream, and it's just like, and you're not getting a lot of veggies because veggies are they can be carbohydrates. So it just doesn't sit well. And also when you start to limit these things, you start to crave those things. So when you have too little of a food, you start to crave it. And when you have, and you don't really feel well, you might be a little bit moody, you might be a little bit irritable, you're not getting those essential vitamins and nutrients from whatever it is that you need to be eating. And then when you eat too much, you're feeling like crap. So it's just about finding that nice balance, which is why today we're talking about that, and creating a nice balanced food plate that we're going to get into in just a second. But also, when you're cutting out those major food groups and cutting out major foods, you're not living life at its fullest, because life is full of pizza parties, wine nights, birthday cake. That's living life. And I am all for substitutes, bringing your own food, doing what you need to do, telling the host that you're gluten-free, you're dairy-free, you're keto, and having alternatives. That's great. But what I'm saying is that, come on, like, these foods are it's food that makes you feel like you're actually enjoying life. And for example, the other day, I actually had a friend come over, and it was a friend I haven't seen in a long time, and she ended up staying over, and we wanted to have a nice brunch, and we had all of these lovely sweet cinnamon buns and bacon and all these things, and it was just nice to celebrate with her and just enjoy the food and enjoy having her over. So we made all this fun stuff, and that I don't necessarily like to eat things like cinnamon buns or bacon all the time, but it was fun to have. And you'll notice that once you start eating stuff like that, once you have alternatives, like I'm the queen of finding alternatives to cinnamon buns or brownies, and that's exactly what my cookbook is all about. But it's nice to have it every once in a while. But what I was saying is, once you do have it, you feel a little bit crappy, because you're all the sugar, all of these all of those simple carbohydrates that aren't going to make you feel that great. But that's a side note. But anyway, we had this really nice brunch. But when it goes back to creating a balanced plate, which we're talking about today, is if you're gonna have a cake or a cinnamon bun or whatever, balance it out with something else. So I made sure that I had some eggs with it. I had my healthy fat, I had my protein, we cooked it with olive oil, I had an avocado, in addition to all the other stuff. So it's not about cutting out the cinnamon buns or not having the sugar. It was about enjoying life. So, and that's what I want for you, to be able to be in a really beautiful, spot with all of this, where you don't feel the need to beat yourself up come Monday, and you're like, oh, well, I had, I had cinnamon buns, I had pizza, I had birthday cake, I had some wine. What's the point of even making a smoothie on Monday? So the only thing that matters is just getting back on track after you feel like you've had something that you don't consider necessarily healthy, to just the next best thing, the next best meal. That's the only thing that matters. And so what does a balanced plate look like? So a balanced plate looks like, and again, this is very generalized, and if you're looking for a more custom, unique plan, then that's something that you and I can talk about individually and how we can create that for you. But this is very generalized, because I know people do have certain restrictions, and you can't necessarily have all sorts of foods, or you have specific goals that you want to achieve. So, gotta drink some water. All right, so you want to create a plate that has veggies, obviously. Did you know I was going to say that first, veggies? Yeah, you want to have veggies. And you're going to say, maybe you'll say, I know I hear it a lot, veggies, or, maybe you're not a fan of all kinds of veggies. Whatever veggie you like is what you're going to put on that plate, okay? Maybe you only eat baby carrots. I don't care. Put that on your plate. We're keeping this super basic, super simple. We're not overcomplicating things. I'm not having you count macros or count calories or do anything fancy. We're just creating a balanced plate here with whole foods. We're adding in the whole foods into whatever it is that you're already having. So if you're only a fan of baby carrots, have only baby carrots. You might want to prepare it differently to see if you like other foods. You know, if you're not a fan of, let's say, broccoli, and the only time you've ever had broccoli is when it was like boiled and didn't taste very good, it wasn't seasoned well, and it was the way your mom always made you have it, and you're like, broccoli is disgusting. Like, or you only had it raw. So try it a different way. Try to roast it, or try to steam it. Like, who knows? Just try different ways to prepare the veggie, and you may like it better. So anyway, you want to have a good amount of veggies on your plate. You want to fill up on your veggies. I say you want to make it about 50% of veggies, and then so after veggies, you want to have a good protein source. And this can be anything: meat, fish, tofu, beans, nuts, seeds, and even protein powder. You know, for example, when I make my smoothies in the morning, sure, I add things like, hemp seeds or different things that do have protein in it, but I add a protein powder to it, a plant-based protein powder that makes sure that I balance out all of the fruit and the veggies that I am putting in there, and the fats. So, and it doesn't have to be, you don't necessarily have to have like organic or grass-fed protein. You can have, start where you're at. If you're someone who's eating very processed meat right now, whether it's lunch meat or hot dogs or, frozen meats, then just getting some fresh meat into your system is what we want right now. And you'd be surprised. You gotta really even check the ingredients on your meats, because I was so alarmed when I heard. I was so confused really when I heard that 85% of the foods in the grocery store are loaded with sugars and artificial ingredients, and I'm like, how is that even possible? Because 85%, like, that's like the majority of the store. Like, how are meats, or how are all these other things, how do they have artificial ingredients in them? And that's because they sneak it in there. You really have to be your own best advocate and read the ingredients and things, and especially a lot of the frozen stuff has a lot of added ingredients, and even the stuff that's in the fresh section, added ingredients. So you're looking for fresh meats, fresh chicken, whatever it is you eat, lamb, pork, if you're vegetarian, tofu, beans, nuts, seeds, they're all a good source of protein. And so after protein, you want to have a good source of healthy fats. And a healthy fat is something that is olive oil, coconut oil, avocado, ghee. Grass-fed butter is great. So grass-fed butter is butter that comes from grass-fed cows. And the reason why I say grass-fed butter and not just regular butter, because a lot of the butter, you really have to look at the ingredients when you go buy certain things, because a lot of the things just have added ingredients, and that's what we want to try to avoid. So if you can just make one or two swaps for these less processed whole foods in your diet, even if it is just the butter, because it's grass-fed butter, it doesn't really cost that much more, and it doesn't really taste any different. It actually tastes really fresh and delicious. That is a great healthy fat. And even meat. I mean, a lot of these foods are going to overlap on one another, that, your meat is going to have fats in it. Your protein might have some carbohydrates in it, and it's going to overlap, and we'll learn more about that. But meat, it counts as a healthy fat, and then dairy also counts as a healthy fat, and dairy is going to be its own food group. So you see how it's kind of overlaps. It doesn't have to be like perfectly segmented, but what I aim to say is have about 50% of your meal veggies, and then you're gonna just like overlap the rest of these kind of how you see fit. But you want to have a You just want to make sure that you're becoming aware of what you're adding to your plate. And sometimes I make the most random meals. Like I'll just go in the refrigerator and I'll have these food groups in mind, and I'm like, okay, I see some chicken, and then, you know, I look for a healthy fat, so I might, or I might, it's sometimes like a random egg that I put on top of something and I like mix it together, or you just got to get creative, but you got to keep these in mind. So healthy fat, and then a carbohydrate. You don't have to be afraid of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, there's two main different kinds of carbohydrates. There's a simple carbohydrate and then a complex carbohydrate. And the simple carbohydrates are the carbohydrates that you want to avoid, really. Those are the, you know, the pastries, the pastries, the chips, the things that are those carbs that are, they're not nourishing at all. Whereas the complex carbohydrates are the whole grains, the rice, the quinoa, those kind of foods you want to add in more. So you don't have to necessarily be afraid of carbohydrates. You want to add the right carbohydrates. And also, carbohydrates have a lot of fiber in them, and fiber is what you are looking for. That is great for weight loss, guys. And again, there's a lot to this. This is a very complex topic that I'm trying to talk about in a limited time. So again, if you want more information on this and like how fiber balances out the carbohydrates, and you know, the amount of fiber subtracted from the amount of carbohydrates is what your carbohydrate net is really, that's very complex, and that is stuff that we can talk about individually. And then so finally, after we go through the fats, the proteins, the carbohydrates, the veggies, you're left with fruit and dairy. And fruit and dairy, you might have these overlapping, and maybe you had dairy as you're a protein source, or I sometimes recommend making a dessert out of that. So a lot of times after meals, we get a sweet tooth, so, you know, freeze up or make a parfait, make a fruit and yogurt parfait, or freeze your, freeze your banana, freeze your fruit, and then you can make like a, those Yo-Nana ice creams you can make with that. Get creative with this. Again, I got a whole cookbook for you if you're interested in learning how to make really beautiful breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner, dessert recipes with these whole foods, so that you can still have these really decadent and guilty foods and not feel so bad about it. Because listen, I love my food. Like, I eat my pizza, I eat my chicken wings, I eat my brownies, I eat all of the things, but I know how to make them in healthy ways, so I don't have to feel bad about having it. So again, this is a very general overview of this, and this can be manipulated to suit your most individual needs based on your goals and all that fun stuff. And that is stuff that we talk about individually on a call together, and which I dive in a lot more in my coaching, so that you can really, achieve your goals instead of crash dieting in a few months. And this does take some work. This does take some patience. This does take some practice, really, because like I said, when we first started, you may have thought one way for your whole life, where you have to diet in order to lose weight. You have to be starving in order to lose weight. You have to eat the typical bro meal, like I like to call it. It's so gross. Like, you don't have to eat boiled chicken and steamed broccoli and just plain rice all day. Like, no, please, no, no. It doesn't have to be like that. So that is it, really. And again, make sure you're downloading the workbook, because in there you have the whole Whole Foods grocery list, the shopping list that you can go to the store and not be so overwhelmed by, and be able to pick and choose some of these food groups to buy, so that you can create a nice balanced meal with it and really plan ahead. So in the workbook also, there's ways that are going to promote you to plan ahead more, so that you can set yourself up for success. Because this is all well and good, but when it comes to be Monday morning and you're like, what the hell am I supposed to eat? Like, I I don't even know what I got from the grocery store. Nothing is planned, and you're only setting yourself up for failure. So that is about it for me. Tune in for tomorrow. We're gonna dive in even more to so that you can really ditch this whole dieting mentality once and for all and get to where you really want to be in your health and body and weight loss goals. So, all right, guys, I'll talk to you later. Bye.